The morning started like any other on Earth until the sensors went crazy. Lieutenant Song Mina was drinking her coffee at the lunar base monitoring station when every alarm in the facility began screaming at once. The readings made no sense. Thousands of massive objects were dropping out of hyperspace just beyond the asteroid belt. "Get me Admiral Kim Tae-ho immediately," she shouted over the chaos, her hands flying across the control panels. Within minutes, the holographic display showed what humanity had feared for decades, but never truly believed would happen. An alien armada stretched across space like a wall of death, each ship the size of a city block. On the bridge of the flagship, Defiance. Admiral Kim Tae-ho studied the tactical display with grim determination. His weathered face showed no emotion as he counted the enemy vessels. 10,000 alien dreadnoughts against humanity's entire space fleet of 300 ships. The mathematics were brutal, but Tae-ho had fought impossible odds before. "Sir, incoming transmission from the lead alien vessel," reported Commander Park Ji-woo, her usual confidence replaced by barely controlled tension. She was one of Earth's best tactical officers, but nothing had prepared them for this moment. The main screen flickered to life, revealing a creature that defied human imagination. The alien's multiple eyes glowed with cold intelligence while its crystalline skin reflected the bridge lights like living armor. When it spoke, the universal translator struggled to process the alien's complex language structure. "Primitive species of the third planet?" The alien commander's voice echoed through the bridge like grinding metal. "I am War Master Kelvox of the Hegemony Council. Your rapid technological advancement has been deemed a threat to galactic stability. You have one solar rotation to surrender unconditionally or face total extermination." Tae-ho stepped forward, his uniform crisp despite the dire circumstances. "This is Admiral Kim Tae-ho of the United Earth Defense Force. We reject your ultimatum. Humanity will never bow to tyranny." The alien's expression shifted into what might have been amusement. "Your species shows courage, but lacks wisdom. You cannot comprehend the power you face. This is your final warning." The transmission cut off, leaving the bridge in tense silence. Every officer looked to their admiral, waiting for orders that could determine humanity's fate. Tae-ho activated the fleet-wide communication system. "All ships, this is Admiral Tae-ho. Today we face an enemy that believes humanity is weak because we are young. They think our compassion makes us vulnerable and our diversity makes us chaotic. They are about to learn how wrong they are. Every human who has ever lived, every dream we have ever shared, every child who looks up at the stars with wonder depends on what we do in the next few hours. Make them remember that humanity does not go quietly into the night." The response was immediate. Across the solar system, human vessels powered up their weapons and moved into attack formation. The heavy cruiser, Seoul's Pride, led the first wave, its captain Lee Min-ho coordinating with destroyers and fighters, in a dance of controlled aggression that humanity had perfected through centuries of conflict. When the battle began, space itself seemed to catch fire. Human plasma cannons lit up the darkness while nuclear torpedoes streaked toward alien targets. The enemy responded with weapons beyond human understanding. Energy beams that could slice through titanium hull plating like paper, gravity bombs that crushed entire squadrons, and swarms of robotic fighters that moved with mechanical precision. Captain Yoon Jae-sung commanded the destroyer Busan Lightning in a desperate attack run against an alien battlecruiser. His ship's armor was already melting under enemy fire, but he pressed forward, his crew working with the efficiency born of years of training and absolute trust in each other. "Hull breach on decks 4 through 7, reported his tactical officer. Lieutenant Choi Da-jun, her voice calm despite the chaos around them. "Engines at 60% and falling." "Keep us in the fight," Jae-sung ordered, watching as his torpedo spread found its mark. The alien ship's shields flared and collapsed, but 3 more enemy vessels immediately moved to replace it. For 6 brutal hours, humanity fought with everything they had. The battle raged from Mercury's orbit to the outer planets, human defenders, making the aliens pay for every kilometer of space. Captain Park Sung-ho's fighter squadron performed impossible maneuvers around Jupiter's moons, using the gas giant's gravity well to slingshot past enemy formations and strike at their weak points But courage alone could not overcome such overwhelming numbers. One by one, human ships fell silent. The Defiance itself was taking massive damage, its bridge filling with smoke as systems failed throughout the ship. "Sir, we're losing life support on 12 decks," reported Commander Park Ji-woo. Blood trickling from a gash on her forehead. "Main engines are offline." Through the chaos, Tae-ho received the coded transmission he had been dreading. Captain Lee Min-ho was ready to implement Operation Ghost Protocol, the evacuation plan that had been kept secret from all but the highest levels of command. "Execute immediately," Tae-ho ordered, his heart breaking as he watched Earth's cities burning on the tactical display. "Get our people out." Across the solar system, 15 specially modified ships activated their experimental cloaking systems. These vessels, hidden in asteroid fields and behind planetary bodies, began collecting the survivors. Military commanders, scientists, engineers, and their families were pulled from dying ships and burning installations in a desperate race against time. As the Defiance finally broke apart around him, Admiral Kim Tae-ho stood at his post, watching the evacuation ships disappear into hyperspace. His sacrifice, and that of thousands of other defenders, had brought humanity one final gift: survival. The galaxy would mark Earth as dead and humanity as extinct, but somewhere in the vast darkness between stars, the flame still burned. The Keith Nebula was a graveyard of stars, where purple gas clouds drifted between dead worlds and forgotten civilizations. Deep within this cosmic wasteland, carved into an asteroid the size of a small moon, humanity's survivors had built their greatest secret. The hidden fortress of New Haven hummed with activity as thousands of people worked in chambers that had taken decades to excavate and construct. General Han So-young walked through the command center, her boots echoing on metal floors that had been forged from salvaged alien wreckage. At 58, she carried herself with the confidence of someone who had spent half a century turning desperate refugees into the galaxy's most feared shadow warriors. Her grey-streaked hair was pulled back in a practical style, and her uniform bore no insignia that any alien intelligence service would recognize. "General, we have confirmation from the Outer Rim," reported Colonel Yoon Jae-min, his scarred face a map of battles fought in the darkness between stars. The left side of his jaw had been rebuilt after a hegemony interrogation droid had tried to extract information from him 15 years ago. He had escaped, but not before learning everything about their torture methods and security protocols. So-young stopped at the massive holographic display that dominated the center of the command room. The three-dimensional map showed the entire galaxy, with tiny lights marking hegemony positions, trade routes, and military installations. But scattered among them were different lights, smaller and harder to see unless you knew where to look. These marked humanity's hidden network. "Show me," she said, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had never given an order she wasn't prepared to enforce personally. The display zoomed in on a sector near the galactic core, where hegemony battlecruiser Dominion's Edge had been patrolling for the past 3 months. According to their intelligence, it carried advanced shield generators that humanity desperately needed for their next phase of operations. Captain Park Jin-woo's strike team hit them during their routine hyperspace jump, Jamin explained, highlighting the attack vector on the display. 6 modified interceptors, in and out in less than 4 minutes. They disabled the battlecruiser's engines and downloaded their entire database before the ship could even send a distress signal. So-young nodded approvingly. Park Jin-woo was the son of the legendary Commander Park Ji-woo, who had died with Admiral Kim Tae-ho 50 years ago. The younger Park had inherited his mother's tactical brilliance and added his own innovations, developed through decades of hit-and-run warfare against impossible odds. "Casualties?" she asked, though she already suspected the answer. "None on our side. The hegemony crew was left alive but unconscious. They'll wake up in a few hours with no memory of what happened, thanks to Dr. Kim Era's new memory disruptor technology." The memory disruptors were one of humanity's greatest innovations, combining human neuroscience with alien technology they had stolen over the years. The devices could selectively erase specific memories without causing permanent brain damage, allowing human operatives to strike and vanish like ghosts. Lieutenant Kang Min-seo approached from the intelligence section, carrying a datapad that glowed with encrypted information. At 26, she represented the new generation of humans who had been born in the hidden bases and raised as warriors. From childhood, her augmented reality contact lenses flickered with data streams as she processed multiple intelligence reports simultaneously. "General, Commander Choi Da-eun's deep cover operation has paid off," she announced, her voice tight with excitement. "She's been posing as a Kelvorian trader for 8 months, and yesterday she finally gained access to the Hegemony Central Command database." So Young felt her pulse quicken. Choi Da-eun was one of their best infiltrators, capable of maintaining false identities for years at a time. The surgical modifications that allowed her to pass as various alien species had been painful and dangerous, but they had made her nearly invisible to hegemony security. "What did she find?" So Young asked. Min-seo activated her datapad, projecting a detailed schematic into the air above them. "Complete fleet deployment schedules for the next 6 months, including the locations of their mobile shipyards and the route schedules for their supply convoys. But that's not the best part." The schematic changed, showing a heavily fortified space station orbiting a red giant star in the Vega sector. "This is Hegemony Station Omega-7, their primary research facility for xenobiology and weapons development. According to these files, they're developing a new type of planetary bombardment weapon that could sterilize an entire world in less than an hour." So Young studied the station's defenses with the eye of someone who had spent decades planning impossible missions: force fields that could deflect nuclear weapons, automated defense platforms armed with particle cannons, and a garrison of over 10,000 Hegemony Marines. It looked impregnable, but she had learned long ago that every fortress had weaknesses. "How many people know about this intelligence?" she asked. "Just the 3 of us and Commander Choi, who's still maintaining her cover," Min-seo replied. "Keep it that way for now." So Young turned to address the entire command center, her voice carrying to every corner of the vast chamber. "Attention all personnel. Operation Phantom Phase is now active. All strike teams are to return to base within 72 hours for mission briefing." Around the command center, dozens of human officers began coordinating the recall of their scattered forces. Captain Lee Dong-hyun's Deep Space Reconnaissance Squadron would abandon their current surveillance mission near the Galactic Rim. Major Shin Hye-jin's infiltration teams would extract from their positions inside Hegemony territory. And the Ghost fleet itself, 600 ships that officially didn't exist, would begin moving toward predetermined rally points. As So Young watched her people work with the efficiency of a well-oiled machine, she allowed herself a moment of pride. 50 years ago, they had been broken refugees fleeing the death of their homeworld. Now they were something the galaxy had never seen before, a phantom army that could strike anywhere and vanish without a trace. But their greatest strength wasn't their technology or their tactics. It was their unity of purpose. Every human in the Remnant, whether they had been born on Earth or in the hidden bases, understood what they were fighting for. Not just revenge for their murdered world, but the survival of human culture, human values, and human dreams. "Colonel Jamin," So Young said quietly, "activate the Deep Space Communication Array. It's time to contact our allies." Over the decades, humanity had secretly recruited members of dozens of species oppressed by the hegemony. Kelvorian merchants, who had lost their homeworld to hegemony taxation, Zephyrian scientists whose research had been stolen and weaponized, and Mantari warriors whose honor codes had been insulted by hegemony arrogance. These allies provided intelligence, resources, and safe havens in exchange for humanity's protection and technological innovations. The galaxy believed humanity was extinct, but they were about to learn the truth. The ghosts in the void were real, and they were coming home. The first reports came from the outer spiral arm, where entire star systems simply vanished from long-range sensors. At first, the hegemony dismissed these as equipment failures or natural stellar collapse. But when the refugee ships started arriving at border stations, telling stories of silicon nightmares that devoured everything in their path, the galaxy began to understand that something unprecedented was happening. In the hidden command center of New Haven, General Han So-young watched the emergency broadcasts with growing alarm. The holographic display showed a wave of destruction moving inward from the galactic rim, consuming everything in its path like a cosmic plague. Entire civilizations that had existed for millions of years were being wiped out in a matter of days. "General, we're receiving distress signals from over 200 systems," reported Lieutenant Kang Min-seo, her fingers dancing across multiple control panels as she tried to process the flood of incoming data. "The pattern is consistent. Something arrives in system, strips every planet down to its core, then moves on to the next target." The main screen flickered to life, showing grainy footage from a hegemony reconnaissance drone. What they saw defied comprehension. Massive mechanical entities the size of small moons were literally eating planets, their crystalline bodies extending tendril-like appendages that broke down matter at the molecular level and absorbed it into their ever-growing mass. "Dear gods," whispered Major Shin Hye-jin, her usually composed demeanor cracking as she watched an entire world disappear into the maw of one of the creatures. "What are those things?" "The enemy calls them devourers," said Colonel Yoon Jae-min, his scarred face grim as he read from an intercepted hegemony intelligence report. "Silicon-based life forms from beyond our galaxy. They don't use planets like we do. They literally consume them for raw materials and energy." So-young studied the tactical data with the analytical mind that had kept humanity alive for 50 years. The devourers moved in coordinated swarms, suggesting some form of hive intelligence. Their technology was unlike anything in the known galaxy, based on principles that seemed to violate basic physics. Most disturbing of all, they showed no interest in communication or negotiation. They simply consumed everything organic and inorganic in their path. "How many hegemony fleets have engaged them?" she asked. 17 so far," Jamin replied, highlighting the battle sites on the galactic map. "All destroyed. The Devourers adapt to every weapon system within minutes. Energy shields, kinetic barriers, even quantum disruptors have no effect after the first few shots." The command center fell silent as the implications sank in. The hegemony military machine that had crushed humanity 50 years ago was being systematically destroyed by an enemy that seemed unstoppable. But what came next shocked everyone even more. "General, we're receiving a priority transmission from Hegemony Central Command," announced Communications Officer Park Wo-jin, his voice tight with disbelief. "They're broadcasting on all frequencies, asking for help from any species willing to fight." The main screen switched to show Warmaster Kelvox, the same alien commander who had demanded Earth's surrender 5 decades ago. The crystalline being that had once radiated arrogant confidence now appeared desperate, his multiple eyes darting nervously as he spoke. "To all sentient species in the galaxy," Kelvox's translated voice carried across space, "the Hegemony Council formally requests military assistance against the extragalactic threat designation Devourer. In exchange for aid, we offer full citizenship rights, territorial autonomy, and technological sharing agreements to any species that joins our defense coalition." Captain Park Sung-min, who had been listening from his position at the tactical station, suddenly exploded with fury. At 32, he was the son of the legendary Commander Park Ji-woo and had inherited both her tactical brilliance and her fierce protective instincts. His fist slammed into the tactical display, causing the hologram to flicker. "Let them burn," he shouted, his voice echoing through the command center. "They murdered billions of our people. They turned Earth into a lifeless rock. Now they want our help when their precious empire is threatened." Other officers nodded in agreement. Captain Lee Min-jung, whose grandparents had died in the orbital bombardment of Seoul, stepped forward. "Sung-min is right. Why should we save the species that committed genocide against us? Let them face the same extinction they forced on humanity." The debate that followed was intense but brief. So-young listened to her officers express 50 years of accumulated rage and grief, understanding their pain because she shared it. But as their leader, she had to think beyond vengeance. "Silence," she said, raising her hand. The command center fell quiet, waiting for her decision. "We are not like them. We don't commit genocide even against our enemies." She moved to the central communication console, her movements deliberate and purposeful. Around her, the survivors of humanity watched as their general prepared to make contact with the civilization that had destroyed their homeworld. "Open a channel to Hegemony Central Command," she ordered. "Full encryption, maximum range." The holographic display activated, showing So Young's image being transmitted across the galaxy. She stood straight, her uniform bearing the insignia of the United Earth Defense Force that officially no longer existed. "This is General Han So Young, of the Human Remnant Fleet," she said, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had spent decades fighting impossible odds. "Humanity survived your attempt at extermination. We offer our assistance against the Devourer threat in exchange for full restoration of human rights, territorial sovereignty, and the complete terraforming of Earth to its pre-war condition." The transmission cut off, leaving the command center in stunned silence. Across the galaxy, Hegemony monitoring stations picked up the signal and relayed it to their superiors. Within hours, every major species in the galaxy would know that humanity had not only survived, but had grown strong enough to offer help to the very enemies who had tried to destroy them. War Master Kelvox himself received the transmission in his command bunker deep beneath the surface of the Hegemony capital world. The alien leader who had once dismissed humanity as primitive savages now stared at the image of a human general offering salvation to his dying civilization. "Find out everything about this human remnant fleet," he ordered his intelligence officers. "I want to know how many ships they have, where they've been hiding, and what capabilities they possess." But even as Hegemony intelligence services scrambled to gather information about humanity's survivors, the Devourers continued their relentless advance toward the galactic core. Time was running out for everyone, and the galaxy's only hope might lie with the species they had tried so hard to exterminate. In the depths of space, aboard hidden human vessels, crews that had trained for 50 years in the art of impossible warfare began preparing for their greatest battle. The ghosts in the void were about to step into the light, and the galaxy would never be the same. The Kepler Prime system had become a graveyard of metal and dreams. Thousands of wrecked ships drifted between the planets, their hulls twisted and broken by weeks of brutal combat. The Devourers had chosen this system as their staging ground for the final assault on the galactic core, and 3 different fleets had already tried to stop them. All had failed. Admiral Lim Wu-jin stood on the bridge of the human flagship Ghost of Earth, studying the tactical display with eyes that had seen 50 years of impossible battles. Around him, the combined fleet stretched across space like a steel constellation. Human vessels flew alongside former enemies, their crews working together with the desperate efficiency of those who knew they faced extinction. "Admiral, the Devourer, mothership is moving toward the hyperspace jump point," reported Captain Yoon Damin from the sensor station. "If it escapes with the tactical data it's collected, it will know everything about our defensive capabilities." Wu Jin nodded grimly. The mothership was a nightmare made manifest, a crystalline creature the size of a small moon that pulsed with stolen energy from a dozen consumed worlds. Its surface writhed with mechanical tendrils that could tear apart battleships like paper, and deep within its core lay the hive-mind intelligence that coordinated the entire Devourer swarm. "All ships, this is Admiral Lim Wu-jin," he broadcast to the combined fleet. "Today we end this nightmare or die trying. Human vessels, you know what to do. Alien ships, follow our lead and trust your human tactical officers. We've spent 50 years learning how to fight impossible odds. The human ships moved first, their modified engines allowing them to accelerate faster than any standard Hegemony vessel. The Soul's Vengeance, commanded by Captain Park Jin-woo, led the first wave in a spiraling attack pattern that confused the Devourer drone ships. Instead of the predictable frontal assault that the aliens expected, the humans struck from 12 different angles simultaneously. "Execute Protocol 7, Wu Jin ordered as the enemy formation began to waver. Protocol 7 was humanity's greatest tactical innovation, developed through decades of asymmetric warfare. Instead of trying to match the enemy's overwhelming firepower, human forces would fragment into small, fast-moving units that could strike at weak points and vanish before the enemy could respond effectively. Captain Choi Hye-jin commanded a squadron, of modified interceptors that danced between the Devourer drones like deadly butterflies. Her ships were barely larger than fighters, but they carried experimental weapons that could disrupt the silicon-based neural networks that controlled the enemy machines. "Target the connection nodes," she ordered her pilots as they swept past. A cluster of drone ships. Break their coordination, and they become confused. The human-trained alien crews performed maneuvers that would have been impossible under traditional hegemony military doctrine. Kelvorian cruisers used their superior shielding to provide cover, while human fighters struck at enemy weak points. Zephyrian science vessels deployed quantum mines that interfered with Devourer communication systems. Even the proud Mantari warriors learned to fight with cunning rather than honor, using human stealth technology to ambush enemy formations. For 3 hours, the battle raged across the Kepler system. Human tactical doctrine proved devastatingly effective against the Devourer. Hive mind. The aliens had never faced an enemy that fought with such chaotic creativity, and their collective intelligence struggled to adapt to the constantly changing human strategies. But the mothership remained untouchable at the center of the swarm, its massive form beginning to glow with the energy buildup that preceded hyperspace travel. General Han So-young, commanding from the bridge of the New Haven, watched the readings with growing alarm. "Colonel Kim A-Ra, status report," she ordered her second-in-command. A-Ra, who had served with So-young for 30 years, checked her instruments with practiced efficiency. "The mothership's hyperspace drives are at 80% charge. Once it jumps, it will take our tactical data directly to the Devourer home galaxy. They'll know every weakness in our defenses." So-young studied the tactical display, her mind racing through possibilities. The mothership was protected by layers of drones and defensive fields that made a conventional attack impossible. But there was one option that might work. "All ships, this is General Han So-young," she broadcast to the fleet. "I'm taking the New Haven on a direct attack run at the mothership. Cover our approach and be ready to retreat on my signal, Colonel." Kim A-Ra turned to face her commanding officer, disbelief written across her features. "General, that's suicide. The mothership's defenses will tear us apart before we get within weapons range." So-young moved to the navigation console, her fingers inputting coordinates that would take them straight into the heart of the enemy formation. "Not if we don't stop to fight them." The New Haven broke away from the fleet formation, its engines pushing far beyond safety limits as it accelerated toward the massive mothership. Around them, Devourer drones swarmed like angry insects, their energy weapons creating a deadly light show in the darkness of space. "Hull breaches on decks 7 through 12, reported Lieutenant Song Min-ho from the damage control station. "Shields down to 30% and falling. Keep us on course," So-young ordered, watching as the mothership grew larger on the main screen. She could see the creature's surface writhing with defensive systems, massive weapons that could vaporize their ship in seconds. As they closed the final distance, So-young activated the fleet communication system one last time. "This is General Han So-young to all units. I'm going to ram the New Haven into the mothership's core. The explosion should disrupt its hyperspace jump and give you access to its central processing systems." Colonel Kim A-Ra grabbed her general's arm. "There has to be another way. I need you to lead us." So-young smiled sadly, thinking of her daughter Min-jung, who was serving aboard one of the evacuation ships at the edge of the system. "The young ones will lead now. That's how humanity survives." She activated the ship's auto-destruct sequence, setting it to detonate when they reached the mothership's core. Around her, the bridge crew continued working at their stations, each of them understanding what their sacrifice meant for the future of all organic life in the galaxy. "Tell my daughter I kept my promise to her grandmother," So-young said quietly. "Tell her that Earth will see blue skies again." The New Haven struck the mothership's surface like a comet, its reinforced hull boring deep into the creature's crystalline body. For a moment, the massive alien seemed to shudder as foreign matter invaded its core systems. Then the explosion came, a brilliant flash that lit up the entire star system. When the light faded, both ships were gone. But in the final seconds before the detonation, So-young had transmitted everything the New Haven had learned about Devourer technology, biology, and most importantly, the location of their home galaxy. The data packet spread through the human communication network, reaching every ship in the fleet within minutes. The remaining Devourer forces, suddenly cut off from their hive mind coordination, began fighting with the confused desperation of lost children. Human and alien forces pressed their advantage, destroying the leaderless drones with methodical efficiency. Colonel Kim A-Ra, now commanding the human fleet, watched the enemy retreat with tears streaming down her face. They had won the battle, but the cost had been terrible. The galaxy's greatest military mind was gone, leaving behind only the knowledge that would eventually lead to victory. But General Han So-young's sacrifice had given them something more valuable than tactical data. It had shown the galaxy that humanity fought not for conquest or revenge, but for the survival of all life itself. The Devourer home galaxy hung before them like a spiral of living death, its stars dim and cold where countless worlds had been consumed for energy. Commander Kim A-Ra stood on the bridge of the flagship So-young's Legacy, named in honor of her fallen general, watching as the largest military fleet in galactic history prepared for the final assault. 6 months of preparation had led to this moment. Using the tactical data that General Han So-young had died to obtain, the combined forces had struck at Devourer outposts throughout their own galaxy, learning their weaknesses and testing new weapons. Now, with over 10,000 ships from dozens of species, they were ready to end the threat forever. "All squadrons report ready," announced Captain Yoon Jae-sung from the communications station. "The hegemony heavy cruisers are in position, and our allied species have confirmed their attack vectors." A-Ra nodded, studying the tactical display that showed the enemy's home system. At its center lay the Nexus, a massive structure that served as the central processing unit for the entire Devourer collective. Destroying it would cut off the hive mind connection and leave the individual creatures vulnerable to conventional weapons. "Remember what General So-young taught us," she broadcast to the human contingent. "We don't fight for glory or revenge. We fight to protect life itself." The battle began with a coordinated strike from the outer system. Hegemony dreadnoughts, their weapons upgraded with human tactical innovations, engaged the Devourer defense platforms while human fighters darted between the massive mechanical guardians like deadly insects. Captain Lee Dong-hyun led his squadron of enhanced interceptors in a spiraling dive toward the planet-sized defenders. His ships were barely 30 meters long, but they carried experimental weapons that could disrupt the silicon neural networks controlling the enemy machines. "Target the control nodes," he ordered his pilots as they weaved through a storm of energy beams. "Break their coordination protocols." The human fighters moved with precision born of 50 years of guerrilla warfare, striking at weak points and vanishing before the enemy could respond. Behind them, the alien ships followed their lead, learning to fight with the chaotic creativity that had made humanity legendary. Kelvorian engineers had modified their shield generators using human electromagnetic principles, creating defensive barriers that could deflect the Devourer's molecular disruptors. Zephyrian scientists deployed quantum viruses that infected enemy computer systems, causing entire formations to turn on each other. Even the proud Mantari warriors had learned to use stealth and cunning alongside their traditional honor codes. As the fleet pushed deeper into the system, the true scope of the Devourer civilization became apparent. Entire planets had been converted into massive factories, their surfaces covered with mechanical structures that stretched from pole to pole. Artificial moons served as storage facilities for the raw materials harvested from consumed worlds. "By the ancestors," whispered Lieutenant Kang Min-seo as she watched the sensor readings. "They've been doing this for millions of years. Look at the resource accumulation data." A-Ra studied the information with growing understanding. The Devourers weren't just conquerors or parasites. They were refugees, the last survivors of a galaxy that had died billions of years ago. They consumed other worlds not from malice, but from desperate necessity, trying to preserve their silicon-based civilization in any way possible. "That doesn't change what we have to do," she said quietly. "But it explains why they never tried to communicate. They probably see us the same way we see bacteria." The final assault on the Nexus began as the fleet reached the inner system. The structure was beyond imagination, a crystalline construct the size of Jupiter that pulsed with the collected consciousness of trillions of devourer entities. Its surface writhed with defensive systems that could reshape themselves faster than any targeting computer could track. "All human squadrons, this is Commander Ara," she broadcast as her fighter group approached the Nexus. "Execute the So Young. Maneuver. We're going into the core." The So Young maneuver was humanity's ultimate desperate tactic, named after the general who had perfected it with her final sacrifice. Instead of attacking the enemy's strongest defenses, a small force would punch through to the most vital target. While the main fleet provided distraction, Aira's enhanced fighter, Earth's Promise, led the spearhead formation through gaps in the Nexus defenses that existed for only seconds at a time. Her co-pilot, Lieutenant Park Min-jung, managed the electronic warfare systems that kept them invisible to enemy sensors. Approaching the central core, Min-jung reported as their fighter dove deeper into the massive structure. Around them, the Nexus interior revealed itself as a maze of crystalline passages filled with flowing energy and data streams that carried the thoughts of an entire civilization. "There," Ara said, pointing to a cluster of processing nodes at the structure's heart. "That's the main consciousness matrix. If we can disrupt it, the entire collective will lose coordination." Their fighter screamed through the final corridor, dodging automated defenses and energy barriers that tried to block their path. Behind them, the rest of the human squadron followed in perfect formation, their weapons already charging for the critical strike. "This is for Earth," Ara whispered as she activated the quantum torpedoes. "This is for everyone who died 50 years ago." The explosions cascaded through the Nexus core like a chain reaction, each detonation triggering failures in the connected systems. Within minutes, the structure that had coordinated the destruction of countless worlds began to collapse on itself. Across the galaxy, devourer forces suddenly stopped their coordinated movements, individual creatures acting with confused independence. As their hive-mind connections severed, the war that had threatened all organic life was finally over. 3 months after the victory, Earth's restoration was complete. Warmaster Kelvox himself had overseen the terraforming process, using advanced hegemony technology to rebuild the devastated world exactly as it had been before the bombardment. Oceans sparkled blue under a clean atmosphere, while forests and grasslands stretched across continents that had been barren rock for 50 years. Admiral Park Sung-min walked through the restored gardens of Seoul, marveling at cherry trees that bloomed as if they had never been destroyed. Around him, children played in the sunshine, their laughter echoing across parks where his grandparents had once walked. "Admiral, we have confirmation from the exploration fleet," his aide reported, holding a communication device that displayed his daughter's image from the bridge of the New Horizon. Lieutenant Park Min-jung smiled from the screen, her uniform bearing the insignia of humanity's newest space exploration division. Behind her, the bridge crew worked with the quiet efficiency of those about to embark on humanity's greatest adventure. "Ready to depart for the Andromeda Galaxy, sir," she transmitted. "We have volunteers from 43 species requesting to join the expedition." Sung-min nodded proudly. Some humans had chosen to return to their restored homeworld, rebuilding the civilization that had been lost. Others, like his daughter, had decided to carry humanity's spirit to the spaces between galaxies, ensuring that never again would any species face extinction alone. "The stars are waiting," he replied. "Make us proud." As the sun set over Earth's restored landscape, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson that hadn't been seen for 50 years, humanity stood at the threshold of a new age. They had not just survived annihilation, they had transcended it, becoming the galaxy's protectors and the guardians of life itself. The species that had once faced extinction now reached toward infinity, their ships carrying hope to distant stars, while their children played beneath the blue skies of home. The end.